Mr. Chairman, thanks for hosting this important meeting on such an important topic. Good to see some fellow Pennsylvanians on the panel, so thank you for being here today to talk about such an important issue for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and the country. 4,000 Pennsylvanians died last year from fentanyl, about 100,000 nationally. This is a crisis of sort of historic proportion. I see it all the time in Pennsylvania. I was in Cambria County a couple years ago, and I talked to a woman, and she was describing a family member who died of fentanyl poisoning and the devastating effect on her family. So I started to make these campaign visits. I'd ask people, who among you has been affected by fentanyl? Almost half the people in the audience would put their hands up, either their immediate family or their friend group affected by fentanyl. So we've got to get our hands around this, and of course, it's a problem that begins at the southern border primarily with prefactors from China, comes across our border, and then goes out into a network of drug dealers and cartels in the United States. So my first question is for you, Sheriff Lemma, about the coordination among law enforcement. And is there any gaps you see in the way the federal, state, various law enforcement bodies coordinate, and any insights you can give us on what we might do better?
Yes, thank you for the question, Senator. And I think that first, there were gaps. I think that we're reining those gaps in right now. I think that there is potentially some confusion and need for deconfliction in the past between the law enforcement agencies that worked under the Department of Homeland Security Secretary and those that worked for Maine Justice. I suspect now those problems are going to be cleaned up pretty quickly. I do think deconfliction is incredibly important, not only between federal agencies but local, state, and there's platforms and relationships and task forces that are a huge benefit to the country. So what we can do better, I think more of what we're witnessing right now. We're witnessing a bipartisan effort to focus on things that move beyond politics and find a way to at least tackle what we agree on. And I think that through that process should build chemistry and camaraderie. And when we look at what works, we cannot lose focus, treatment, and access to prevention programs and access to life-saving opioid antagonists like Narcan and Cloxato and generic versions. All of those things are incredibly important, but the bad guys have to go to jail. The cartels are a big part of this. They are a threat to this country, particularly the Sinaloa and the Jalisco New Generation cartel, and we have to be incredibly aggressive about that. And unfortunately, many overdoses or poisonings across the country are still being treated as accidental, tragic events. Every person who's dealt from those dealers is likely to experience similar fate. So I've recently had some conversations with incoming Attorney General Pam Bondi. Our association, Major County Sheriffs of America, have had the same conversations, and I think that we're going to see a lot of great progress. So good. More of this is good.
Thank you. And Ms. Matera, fellow Pittsburgher, I want to say I think your grandson is extremely blessed to have your support. It must be emotionally taxing and financially challenging, but it sounds like you're making it work. Unfortunately, as Senator Justice was saying, many grandparents, hundreds of thousands of grandparents across our country suffer through. Any advice that you would offer to families going through a similar situation, and particularly grandparents faced with a similar set of challenges?
The best advice I can offer is to join some sort of a peer-to-peer support group. That has been my lifesaver. Because of my advocacy with Grand Voices, I connect with grandparents raising grandchildren across the country, in the tribal nation, and everywhere. And that's where I get my mojo, because we support one another and we understand one another.
Good. Thanks for that mojo. And Sheriff Lemma, back to you. Just one final question. You talked about collaboration and, of course, common data. Referring to your testimony, common data is an important part of a unified effort. Any commentary on the quality of the data and anything in particular Congress can do to ensure common data standards and availability to combat this horrible fentanyl?
Yeah, I think that we have a lot of great things that are going on, and Congress has really been responsible for those things. The elimination of the X waiver. I really think that really we should take on permanently scheduling xylazine. Many states have already moved down that path. We're seeing the deadly substance xylazine end up in again, mixed in substances and a growing problem across this country, but yet still is not, scheduled at the federal level. What's incredibly frightening about xylazine, it has, it's a animal tranquilizer.
Frank, yeah.
It really eats the skin away and is non-responsive to opioid antagonists. So these success numbers that were presented across the country in various areas would absolutely decline, or the drug dealer would kind of move down the path to move into that business if we don't kind of tighten up on that. But one last thing is kind of looking at that scheduling of that, and then making sure that we have programs that work. Operation Overdrive is a DEA program that has shown great success, great data tracking. Last report, I think it was in 37 cities across the country. Those should spread out not to new cities necessarily, but into the unincorporated counties that those major municipalities are in. I think that data collection, OD Maps, is another great effort to expand research, data collection, and allow us to kind of let science move the path.
Thank you.